Part 1: The Contrarian. The story begins with a question whispered in financial circles, on construction sites, in boardrooms lit by cold fluorescent lights. How does one see opportunity where others see disaster? How does one build a fortune not by following the market, but by stepping boldly into the spaces everyone else runs from? This is the story of Sam Zell, a billionaire, a builder, a breaker of rules, a man many called reckless, and others a genius. Born into displacement, forged in resilience, fueled by a lifelong belief that the crowd is usually wrong. His empire would rise older than skyscrapers and stronger than steel, but it started with nothing more rare than clarity and nerve. This is Sam Zell, America's real estate titan. Sam Zell's story does not begin in America. It begins thousands of miles away, in the cold uncertainty of Europe during the Second World War. His parents, Polish Jews, fled eastward as Nazi forces swept across the continent. They crossed borders under cover of fear, survival guiding every step. When others remained frozen in place, the Zell family moved forward, at any cost. By 1941, they reached the United States. They carried little money, but they carried something far more valuable, a perspective forged by witnessing the world collapse. Sam Zell was born in Chicago in 1941, into a household that understood uncertainty intimately. His parents had seen governments fail. They had seen wealth disappear overnight. They had seen what happens when people assume stability is permanent. From an early age, Sam absorbed this lesson. Security is an illusion. Only adaptability is real. His father, Bernard, built a career as a jewelry wholesaler. But around the dinner table, financial caution mixed with quiet ambition. The past was never spoken of dramatically, but it was always present. It shaped everything. Sam's childhood was not marked by wealth or privilege. Instead, it was marked by curiosity. He was fascinated by value, why something is priced the way it is, why one neighborhood thrives and another fades, why one person gains wealth while another loses it. This question followed him into adolescence, and it would shape the rest of his life. Chicago in the 1950s was a city of neighborhoods stitched together by rail lines and smokestacks. It was not yet the polished financial hub of the modern Midwest. There was grit, noise, movement, possibility. Sam Zell walked those streets with attention. He noticed things most people ignored: vacant lots where others saw decay, boarded storefronts where others saw failure, properties that looked abandoned but were simply overlooked. To most people, these places represented decline. To Sam, they represented mispricing, the greatest opportunity in the world. Before he owned skyscrapers, before he moved billions, before he became a name whispered in Wall Street corridors, Sam Zell started small, not in a boardroom, but in a college dormitory. In the early 1960s, Zell attended the University of Michigan. The campus was loud with social change, activism, and the shifting winds of American identity. But Sam was focused on something else entirely: housing. Students needed places to live. Demand was strong, but supply, affordable, clean, functional supply, was rare. So Sam made his first deal. He found a property owner who was struggling to manage a rental apartment for students. The building was functional, but poorly run. Sam proposed agreement. He would manage the property, improve it, fill it, and in return, he would receive free rent and part of the profits. He had no money, only competence and confidence. The arrangement worked. Then it worked again. Then it scaled. By graduation, he and his business partner, Robert Lurie, managed several hundred apartments in Ann Arbor. Their strategy was simple: look where others aren't looking. Fix what others won't fix. Price what others misjudge. The contrarian formula was already emerging. Sam Zell entered adulthood with something rare. He did not see markets as systems of rules. He saw them as ecosystems of human emotion. Markets rise when people are greedy. Markets fall when people are afraid. Neither state is rational. Both create opportunity. Most people look for safety. Sam looked for distortion. By the late 1960s, Zell and Lurie expanded into Chicago. The city's buildings rose high, towering over Lake Michigan. But beneath the skyline lay cracks, economic, structural, and political. Many property owners feared the city's changing demographics and uncertain future. They exited, sold their buildings cheaply, abandoned their investments. Sam Zell stepped forward. He bought what others sold. He bought when others fled. He believed that cities have cycles: boom, decline, renewal, and that the moment of greatest fear is the moment of greatest opportunity. This belief would define his life. But there's another side to contrarian thinking, and it is not romantic. It is lonely. Contrarians do not follow the crowd. They move in the opposite direction. And when you do that, you walk alone. Financial institutions dismissed Zell. Business leaders considered him eccentric. Older real estate figures, steeped in convention, saw him as reckless. Yet Sam did not argue. He did not try to convince anyone. He simply acted. He was guided not by emotion, but by pattern recognition. Look at supply. Look at demand. Look at fear. Look at price. If the price was wrong, Sam moved. What seemed irrational to others was perfectly logical to him. Cambury over the 1970s would prove him right. America entered a period of stagflation, rising prices, stagnant growth, and widespread uncertainty. Interest rates climbed, business slowed, real estate markets shuddered, many investors panicked. Sam Zell leaned in. He understood something others did not. Inflation erodes the value of money, but real estate, tied to physical land and buildings, can retain or grow value. The key was debt. Fixed-rate debt in an inflationary environment becomes cheaper to repay over time. So while others retreated, Sam acquired, slowly, strategically, relentlessly. By the late 1970s, Sam Zell and Robert Lurie controlled one of the largest private real estate portfolios in the United States, not because they predicted the future, but because they understood the present clearly, while everyone else was looking backward. Yet, beneath the acceleration of their rise, a quieter truth lingered. Sam and Robert were not just business partners. They were brothers in ambition. They trusted each other completely. They shared instinct, rhythm, and the rare ability to act decisively under pressure. But the world is unpredictable, and even titans are vulnerable to loss. The turning point would come, but not yet. For now, the empire was rising, and the world was beginning to notice. Sam Zell earned a reputation, not just as a real estate investor, but as something more controversial: the grave dancer. It was a nickname he did not initially choose, but he embraced it. He used the phrase to describe his method, not celebrating failure, but reviving what others had abandoned. In 1976, he wrote a now famous essay titled "The Grave Dancer." In it, he explained his approach. I look for properties that are troubled, neglected, or discarded. Properties others have given up on, and then I bring them back to life. This was not vulture capitalism. It was resurrection capitalism. Sam Zell did not destroy, he revived. To some, he was a savior of value. To others, a scavenger of distress. But either way, he was undeniable. The 1980s brought new momentum. The American economy surged, regulation loosened, bank lending expanded, and real estate became a playground for the bold. Sam Zell was no longer playing at the edges. He was building scale. He began structuring deals using real estate investment trusts, REITs, long before they became mainstream investment vehicles. REITs allowed real estate to function like stocks, publicly traded, dividend-producing, and accessible to large pools of capital. Zell saw that transparency, liquidity, and institutional access would transform real estate from a local industry into a global one, and he was right. By the late 1980s, Sam Zell helped lead the REIT Renaissance, laying the foundation for what would become a trillion-dollar global market. He was not reacting to trends, he was shaping them. But success invites scrutiny, and wealth invites myth. People wanted to know, what drives a man like Sam Zell? The answer was always the same: discomfort. Comfort breeds complacency. Complacency breeds fragility. Sam Zell maintained a daily awareness that fortune is temporary, that wealth can evaporate, that the world can collapse quickly. Not paranoia, memory. The memory of what his parents escaped. The memory of how quickly stability can disappear. He was not driven by greed. He was driven by vigilance. That vigilance would make him one of the wealthiest real estate figures in American history. But it would also test him in ways few men could endure, because no empire rises without facing the storm. And Sam Zell's greatest storm was approaching. Part 2: The Empire and the Storm. The 1980s and early 1990s were years of expansion, innovation, and calculation for Sam Zell. The empire he built with Robert Lurie was no longer a quiet regional business. It had become a national force, a network of properties, holdings, and financial instruments that pulsed through the American economy. But beneath the growth, the world was shifting. Markets were swelling with easy credit. Developers were building faster than demand. Banks were lending freely, too freely. Real estate began to feel invincible, and that is always the moment of danger. Sam Zell watched this enthusiasm carefully. He understood human behavior. He understood cycles. And he understood that in real estate, optimism can be deadly. So while others expanded aggressively, Sam did something unusual. He sold. He sold properties, positions, and whole divisions, quietly reducing exposure while others were still celebrating. He was preparing for a storm that most investors did not see forming, and the storm came. In the early 1990s, the real estate bubble collapsed. High interest rates, loan defaults, bank failures, entire portfolios crumbled almost overnight. Developers were ruined, investors were wiped out, banks were forced to seize properties they never wanted to own. The real estate market was frozen. What had seemed stable, inevitable, and safe had been revealed for what it always was: a system built on confidence. And confidence had disappeared. But Sam Zell did not panic. He moved forward. He stepped into the collapse with precision. His years of preparation allowed him to acquire properties at a fraction of their value. Not recklessly, strategically. He understood that the market would recover. He understood that cities revive. He understood that land has memory. While the industry mourned losses, Sam Zell planted seeds. And those seeds would grow into one of the most powerful real estate forces in modern American history: Equity Office Properties Trust. Equity Office was not just another real estate company. It was a bold new idea brought to life at institutional scale. It would own skyscrapers, commercial office complexes, corporate campuses, prime urban towers in the great American cities: Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Washington. But it would do something even more disruptive. It would go public. In 1997, Sam Zell took Equity Office Properties Trust to the New York Stock Exchange. It was the largest real estate investment trust offering of its time. The company became a way for everyday investors to share ownership in iconic American buildings, and Sam Zell became the largest office landlord in the United States. He had not just played the real estate market, he had reshaped it. But the triumph was not purely financial, it was personal. During this period of extraordinary growth, Sam Zell faced one of the greatest losses of his life. Robert Lurie, Sam's business partner, friend, and closest professional confidant, was diagnosed with cancer. He was young, ambitious, brilliant, a man who had walked step for step with Sam since the beginning of their journey. Their empire had been built together, each decision, each risk, each victory, shared. Lurie's illness was swift and unforgiving. In 1990, Robert Lurie passed away. He was just 48 years old. The loss shook Sam Zell deeply. The empire remained. The deals continued. But the partnership, the rhythm, the second mind, was gone. Sam stood at the center of a financial world that recognized him as a titan. But the foundation of that world had been built by two. This loss did not break him, but it changed him. It sharpened something in him, a sense of urgency. A reminder that time is the only resource that cannot be replaced. He continued forward, but he did not forget. By the early 2000s, Sam Zell's influence extended beyond office buildings. He had become a powerhouse in logistics, energy, international development, manufacturing, transportation, finance. His holding company, Equity Group Investments, was a vast network of enterprises with over 100 portfolio companies across industries and continents. But one sector in particular would allow him to shape the fabric of America itself: housing. Sam Zell became a major figure in manufactured housing and apartment real estate, gaining ownership stakes in companies that controlled tens of thousands of rental units across the country. His philosophy remained constant. People will always need a place to live. Cities will always evolve. Demand will always shift. Value is not fixed. It is discovered. He did not chase trends. He anticipated consequences. And in 2006, he would make a move that would shock Wall Street. He would sell the crown jewel. Equity office properties had become enormous. It owned some of the most recognizable buildings in America. It was admired, respected, stable. But Sam Zell saw something others did not. A second bubble forming. Office building valuations were climbing rapidly. Credit was expanding again. Real estate investment trusts were attracting speculative capital. The cycle was repeating. The danger was returning. So in 2006, at the height of the boom, Sam Zell sold equity office properties to Blackstone Group. It was, at the time, the largest leveraged buyout in history. A deal worth $39 billion. Investors celebrated. Analysts praised his timing. Historians would later call it one of the greatest real estate exits ever executed. Months later, the U.S. housing market collapsed. The Great Recession began. Millions lost their homes. Banks failed. Lehman Brothers fell. The global financial system trembled. And Sam Zell had exited just before the collapse. To some, he looked like a prophet. To others, like a man blessed by luck. But Sam Zell did not believe in luck. He believed in watching the horizon, while everyone else stared at the ground. Yet, even as he stood atop one of the greatest financial trades in modern history, a new challenge was unfolding. A challenge that would test his philosophy, his judgment, and his public legacy. It would involve one of America's most iconic companies. A brand with a deep history, powerful unions, and a fragile balance sheet. The Tribune Company, newspapers, television stations, radio networks, broadcast towers, once an empire of information. Now a relic struggling to adapt to the digital age. Sam Zell believed he could revive it, restructure it, reignite it. It was a new kind of grave, a new kind of dance. But this time, the music would be different. End of part 2. Part 3. The fall, the legacy, the lesson. The Tribune deal would become one of the most debated decisions in Sam Zell's career. A move that reflected both his boldness and the limits of even a master strategist. In 2007, Sam Zell acquired the Tribune Company, owner of the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, WGN, and a powerful network of media outlets across America. He did it using a structure known as an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. The idea was unconventional. Employees would benefit from the company's future success. Ownership would be shared. A legacy brand would be reborn as a lean, adaptive media force. But the world was changing faster than anyone realized. Newspapers were bleeding readers to the internet. Advertising revenue was shifting to digital platforms, Google, Facebook, emerging networks of algorithmic content. The business model that had sustained American journalism for a century was eroding beneath the surface, and something else was happening. The economy was beginning to crack. When the 2008 financial crisis struck, real estate values collapsed, credit markets froze, and consumer spending stalled. The Tribune Company, already strained, was pushed into a corner. Debt became a weight that could not be carried. Revenues continued to fall. The digital transformation accelerated. And in 2008, just 1 year after Zell acquired it, the Tribune Company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Critics pointed fingers. Commentators declared the move reckless. Some said Zell had misjudged the future. Others claimed he had walked into a burning building. But Sam Zell did not avoid responsibility. He explained it plainly. He had made a bet, a calculated one, and the world had changed faster than even his models anticipated. To Zell, risk was not a failure. Risk was the price of progress. But the Tribune experience left a mark. It became a shadow in the narrative of an otherwise extraordinary career. The world remembered the sale of Equity Office as a display of genius. It remembered Tribune as a reminder that no one, not even the most contrarian mind, wins every battle. And Sam Zell understood this better than anyone. The years that followed were quieter, not withdrawn, but refined. Zell continued to invest in transportation, infrastructure, energy assets, healthcare, logistics, shared office and industrial storage, emerging international real estate. He traveled constantly. He read obsessively. He conducted business through conversation, insight, humor, and a unique willingness to hear what others refused to say. His leadership philosophy remained simple. Question every assumption. Listen more than you speak, and never, under any circumstances, follow the crowd. His voice was blunt, dry, direct, often laced with irony, sometimes controversial, but always clear. He surrounded himself with people who could disagree, smartly, honestly, without fear. He did not want comfort. He wanted truth. Even as wealth made him iconic, Sam Zell remained. Sam Zell. By the 2010s, he had become a mentor figure in American business. Not a motivational speaker, not a guru, but something rarer, a practitioner of real-world capitalism. He spoke openly about uncertainty. He warned about debt excess. He discussed demography, urban evolution, institutional inertia, and the psychology of markets. He told audiences that wealth is built not by predicting the future, but by seeing the present clearly. He believed that people fail because they misunderstand risk, not because they lack intelligence. Risk, he said, is not the enemy. Risk is the path. It was the philosophy that built his empire, and the philosophy that defined his identity. But every story, even one as towering as Sam Zell's, reaches its final chapter. In May of 2023, Sam Zell passed away at the age of 81. He left behind a real estate legacy that reshaped skylines, a financial strategy that influenced how institutions invest, a philosophy that challenged generations of business leaders to think differently. But his true legacy was something quieter. It was the lesson of what his parents carried with them across oceans and borders, the lesson that shaped his life from beginning to end. Stability is never guaranteed. Certainty is an illusion. The world changes, and you must change with it. Sam Zell did not chase comfort. He did not seek applause. He did not fear failure. He moved through the world with clarity, and the courage to act on that clarity. He saw opportunity in places filled with fear. He revived what others abandoned. He questioned what others accepted as truth. And whether critics praise him or condemn him, the undeniable fact remains. He saw what others did not, and he acted when others would not. That is the work of a titan. So the American skyline is filled with monuments to ambition: concrete, steel, glass catching the morning sun. But some legacies are not built from structures. Some are built from ideas, principles, ways of seeing the world. Sam Zell's legacy is not just in the skyscrapers he owned, but in the mindset he embodied. When the crowd moves in one direction, look the other way. Not to rebel, not to provoke, but to see. Because true opportunity does not shout. It whispers, quietly, from the edge of the familiar, from the places others avoid. There, in the silence, is where Sam Zell built his empire. And in that silence, his story continues.